Get Rich Education is brought to you by Norada Real Estate, the Real Asset Investor, and Highlands Residential Mortgage.
Are you on track to achieve your financial goals? Income-producing real estate is the most historically proven way to accumulate wealth and has created more financial freedom than any other means. Norada Real Estate provides everything you need to invest in the best turnkey cash flow rental properties. Our simple, proven system will help you create real wealth and passive monthly income. Get your free strategy session with our knowledgeable investment counselors at noradarealestate.com. That's NORADA realestate.com.
Welcome to Get Rich Education with Keith Weinhold, giving you information and ideas on the investment that has turned more ordinary people into millionaires and billionaires than anything else, and can provide you with more wealth and happiness than you ever thought possible. Now, here's your host, investor, entrepreneur, business owner, and educator, Keith Weinhold.
Welcome to Get Rich Education, episode 126. I'm your host, Keith Weinhold, and thanks so much for your devoted listenership across 179 world nations and from Albania to Alberta to Albany, New York. Today, we're talking with the number one selling personal finance author of all time. Of course, that's Robert Kiyosaki. You're going to find out what he's been up to since he was here last year and get his thoughts on wealth creation. I'm sure you probably know that Robert Kiyosaki authored the mega popular 1997 book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and it impacted my life deeply, like it probably has yours. Our show gets 13,000 to 14,000 listens every week, so I bet there's at least, say, 1,000 of you that haven't read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, so if you haven't read it, read it. The book tells us how you can think and act like the wealthy. And I think that part of the Rich Dad, Poor Dad book's power is that it tells you things that you've thought before, but you had never actually seen in writing. So it kind of validates what you had long thought, but just hadn't seen yet. And that's why it inspires you to act. And I think you know that Rich Dad, Poor Dad inspired me back in 2002 to make my first ever home purchase, a fourplex building where I lived in one unit and rented out the other three, rather than begin with a single family home like most people do. Robert designed the popular cash flow board game. He's coined concepts like the cash flow quadrant, and he's popularized notions like that your house, your primary residence that you own, is not an asset because you pay it every month. And conversely, an asset is something that pays you every month. Something that pays you every month, which is an asset, is like your turnkey income property where you're receiving rental income cash flow checks every month from your property management company. 8 months ago, I was honored because I was asked to become a writer for Kiyosaki's Rich Dad Advisors myself, and I've since written and had about 20 articles published for them because we have a lot of similar philosophies, and we have a lot of similar philosophies because Rich Dad influenced me, and being so greatly influenced by the Rich Dad books growing up, it's a real honor that I get to write columns alongside them, something that really I'm in awe over and in some disbelief of. I am a believer in Rich Dad's core teachings and principles. I just deliver that message in a different way than Robert, of course, just like any two people are going to deliver a message in a different way. What is an abundance mindset versus a scarcity mindset? Well, for one thing, rather than working for your money exclusively, let your assets produce income for you that you don't have to work for. Let's talk about that some more with our guest. Robert Kiyosaki, welcome back onto Get Rich Education.
Well, thank you very much. I like talking to you.
Yeah, I love our chats. And I really like the mission of your company, the Rich Dad Company. Your mission is elevating the financial well-being of all humanity. And here in 2017, that's still as relevant as ever because in school, there still isn't any widespread formal financial education for students. So how does a lack of financial education in our school system still manifest itself in society today? And what can we do about it?
I don't have the answer for that. I'm just saying what does school teach you about money? And for most people, the answer is nothing. And the sad thing about it is, even though it's nothing, people do nothing, as you know. So I think that's really the challenge. In my personal opinion, our school system is corrupt. Most school teachers sincerely think they're doing a good job, but most school teachers are like my poor dad, highly educated people with no financial education. And it's those guys, the PhDs of the world, who went to maybe good schools, they have no financial education, but they run much of our economy. Like the Federal Reserve Bank is 1,000 economic PhDs, and most of them are not competent enough to get a job in the private sector.
Right.
I mean, they're not even good. And most of those 1,000 PhDs will receive a defined benefit pension for the rest of their lives, whereas guys like you and me, we have to either invest in a 401k or do something like that, where they don't have to worry. So, I mean, how in the world can they lead the economy when they live in their own little bubble? And then you have guys like Obama, he went in a poor man and comes out a rich man. And I'm not Republican or Democrat, but those guys come out with defined benefit pension plans, gold standard health care and all that, but the average person doesn't receive that. So in my opinion, our world economy is in trouble because our best and our smartest and our brightest have no financial education either. And on top of that, they rip us off, the taxpayer, by expecting the taxpayer to take care of them for life. So that's kind of, in my opinion, the crisis. There's two levels of life, the bullshit level and the dog shit level. The bullshit level is where the politicians are at, and the dog shit level is where you and I walk the street and step on it every day.
Yeah, well, a lot of that's because we're not aware of these things. We don't learn about how money works in school. I think what we learn about in school is how work works and how to be a good worker in order to earn the money. I often joke that people spend all this time, both in school and outside of school in their profession, they spend all this time learning about how work works. They don't spend any time learning about how money works, but yet money is the only reason they go to work.
Oh, it's actually worse than that, Keith. I went to military school, and I served 6 years in the Marine Corps. And one of my best subjects was economics. And also when I was a kid, I read the Communist Manifesto and then Ayn Rand. Communist Manifesto was by a man named Karl Marx. So Marx's complaint was that, there would be a socioeconomic revolution which would end democracy via sociology and then possibly communism. And the thing that Marx talked about was the difference between the proletariat, which is the working class, and the bourgeois, which is the middle class. And today, both the proletariat and the bourgeois are in trouble. But one of the reasons everybody's in trouble is because if you read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Rich Dad's lesson number one is the rich don't work for money.
Right.
When I hear parents talking to their little darlings, their kids, they say, now you go to school and you get a job. Well, that's working for money. In other words, our whole parenting and school system is programming kids to be proletariat, laboring class. And the complaint that Marx had, if you studied anything's economic system, was that the rich controlled the production. In other words, the rich controlled the factories, the businesses, and those organizations. And our school system trains people to work for those organizations or be proletariat. And that's why Rich Dad's lesson number one was the rich don't work for money. And the reason what you're doing and the reason I support your efforts, get rich education, is you're at least teaching people to own the factory, to own the production. And the reason the proletariat, who are very upset today, these highly educated academic types with their masters and PhDs, is they don't own anything. So they have to steal from the government. I just did a radio interview where in Phoenix, Arizona, 50 of the top bureaucrats in Arizona will be paid $178 million as public servants. $178 million for public servants. Starting pay for public servants in Arizona is about $45,000, but the total price with benefits is over $105,000. And so our working class who went to school, people like Janet Yellen, the Federal Reserve Chairman, they're ripping us off. And they're good people, but they're not financially educated. And then she runs the Fed. She and Bernanke, academics who know nothing about money. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, it's incredibly important to learn about money.
No, they're communists. That's the problem, Keith. They're communists. See, they have to steal from the rich. They have no production. They don't own the production, so they work for money. I don't work for money. I don't have a job. If you're saying to your kid, go to school and get a job, you're training them to be proletariat, labor, common, lower class. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, I don't know if children are being best served anymore these days if that's what they hear.
Well, ask yourself, was that what your parents told you? Go to school and get a job?
That is what they expected of me, yes.
Yeah, so that you're being trained to be what Marx calls lower class, proletariat. Society does not own the production. And Marx was pissed off at the guys like Trump who owned the production. I own production. I don't have a job. Very big difference. It means we're going to revolution. That's what's going on in the world today. That's why people are so angry at Trump. They don't have anything. They see him, who is a billionaire, and they blame him rather than blaming the very people who our tax dollars pay for. The people like Janet Yellen, our school teachers, our government officials, those are the guys that are ripping us off, not Donald Trump.
I see evidence of less capitalism all the time, not more capitalism all the time.
There is no capitalism in America. It's now socialism going to fascism.
Yeah, if you look at where we come from, that's true. And then if a program's instituted and someone tries to take it away, they say, hey, what are you doing? What are you trying to take, say, Social Security away for? Well, we've all become accustomed to that over generations, but that is the inroads of more socialism.
It is socialism. It's communism. It's fascism. And the people that are doing it to us are the people that think people like Trump are ripping us off. And Trump takes no salary as president. But a guy, I'm not Republican or Democrat, but Obama is paying his mother-in-law a defined benefit pension of $160K a year for being a babysitter to her grandkids, Michelle's mother. I mean, these guys think the government owes them a living. They go to Harvard, and then they blame guys like Trump for ripping us off when they're the problem.
Right.
It's our academic elite who are the problem. They don't know anything about money. They need a paycheck, and they steal from the taxpayer via bloated pensions and benefits.
Yeah, and I think where it really all begins is people just don't want to be self-reliant. People just don't want to be responsible for themselves. They want others to take care of them.
They want to go to school and get a job. That's what they're doing. And they want the benefit, put the money in a savings account in a 401k, and then they can be very disappointed when that 401k vaporizes in the next stock market crash.
It really takes a different way of thinking, and you do have a lot of these thought-provoking sentences and quotes out there that just kind of want to make readers and followers want to know more. Like you said, the rich don't work for money, or your house is not an asset, or savers are losers, debtors are winners. And actually, your favorite quote that gets someone thinking differently and trying to be more self-reliant and realize that they can be in control of their lives is my favorite Rich Dad quote of all time: don't live below your means, expand your means. And I've really always wanted to ask you, I don't think I've asked you some of your favorite examples of not living below your means, but instead using those same resources and faculties and energies and expanding your means. Can you give a good example of that?
You have to invest in education that schools don't provide you. Like when I was in 1973, I took a 3-day real estate course. It's made me a multimillionaire over and over and over again, because every year I don't look for a job. Every year I look for more assets. So like this month alone, I made $3 million tax-free because of my real estate. A lot of people don't make $3 million a year and not pay tax on it. But that's what happens when they go to school to work for money, to look for a job, but know nothing about debt or taxes. It's their problem, not my problem. Then some of these communists get upset with me because I'm making so much money, but they have their PhDs and MBAs. It's the highly educated academics with no financial education that are the people right now who are at war with Trump. Now, again, I'm not Republican or Democrat. I don't agree with a lot of things that Trump said. He was mean and cruel. But as you know, in America today and across the world, there's a war going on for those who like Trump and those who hate Trump. And they're really going against Karl Marx and the Communist Manifesto. And the people that are angry are the people who work for money, the proletariat who have no production. They have a job. They have a paycheck. Those are the people that are angry. And they look up to people like Janet Yellen and Ben Bernanke and Barack Obama, people also need a paycheck. That's the problem. They don't know what they're doing with money.
So that's a great answer. Your thought process in producing more yourself and expanding your means rather than living below your means was going out on a limb, doing what most don't do, and buying a 3-day real estate course and investing your money and investing your energies in that, and not going to the supermarket and finding the cheapest box of Cheerios on sale that you could find, worrying about living below your means.
I'm asked, how many investment properties do you own? Every year I add another 300 or 400 to it. That's 300 or 400 checks a month coming in. Or I write a book and I sell it to 50 book publishers across the world who pay me a minimum of $10,000. Then they pay me royalties every 90 days on top of that. That's expanding my means. I don't go out looking for a job. I don't go back to school for my MBA. That's ridiculous. I don't go for my PhD. I don't want the taxpayer to pay for my pension or my medical. I can do that myself. But the people that expect the government to take care of them are the people who, as Marx says, all they can do is sell their labor because they have no production. They don't own anything. So at least you own property. I own property. Your listeners own property. You're not communists. But the people that run the economy, a lot of them are closet communists. They just don't know it.
Yeah. So people's wealth is going to have a threshold and have a limit when they're trading their time for dollars, like you're saying, when they're selling their time for money. They only have so much time that they can trade for dollars. Whereas you, when you publish a new book and you decide to do that, you're basically printing money for yourself on demand.
Correct. Like I said, I have 3 new books coming out next month, April and May, and I'm going to sell most of them to 50 different publishers throughout the world. So that's how you make money. You don't look for a job. Give me a break. So I have production. And the average person has a job. And they have to work for the rich people who do own the factories or publishing houses.
People that have a job don't have time to get rich.
No, they're not smart enough to get rich. That's the problem. They have the wrong skill sets to be entrepreneurs and investors. Like the number one skill set for an entrepreneur is you got to sell.
Yeah.
But the average person cannot sell enough. Let's say their net per month is $10,000 a month. They can't sell $10,000 a month. So they want a job with benefits and a paycheck with a guarantee from the state and federal government. And you look at the pension plans all across the world, like CalPERS, the California Pension Plan for Public Servants. Today, that thing is $1 trillion underwater. That means all those California public servants who thought they had a pension, $1 trillion underwater is $1,000 billion. Now, how is California going to pay for all those guys who expect the government to take care of them? I don't know. And that bill is coming due today. The same as Social Security and Medicare. You look at city-states such as Puerto Rico. Those guys paid themselves fortunes, and now the banks won't lend them any more money, so Puerto Rico is going to go down. The same as Greece is going to go down. And you talk about oil in Alaska. You look at what's happening to Russia, Venezuela, Colombia, and Saudi Arabia. I was just in Dubai. The low oil prices are killing people. But nobody talks about that.
It's killing people the worst that we're only dependent on one income stream. And that's not what we want to do. We don't want to be dependent on one income stream. We don't want to be completely dependent on someone else for our income.
Now, worse than that is I used to work, my first job was up in Alaska, Valdez, on an oil tanker. And I know, the people of Alaska got so used to that. What was that fund you guys have? Petroleum fund or something?
Yeah, it's called the Alaska Permanent Fund Dividend.
Yeah. And everybody got used to that. Then they had the Exxon Valdez go aground. And then that boosted the economy because it brought billions of dollars by, do-gooders trying to save the economy, which is a terrible mistake. But Alaskans are not good with their money. It's nothing to do with oil. They're just bad with their money. They've had it too good. Oil's kept them afloat.
Yeah, that's right. And it's really risky to be dependent upon one commodity. And a lot of people in those oil geographies sure are finding that out. You mentioned a couple good ideas for creating wealth. And, I use the words basically printing money on demand when you decide to purchase more apartment buildings or publish a new book. And, I agree with you when you say that most people can get rich. They just really don't have the time. You say first exit the rat race and then get rich. Here in 2017, are there any other opportunities for people to exit the rat race, especially with newer technologies?
There's always opportunities, more opportunities now than ever before. The trouble is Again, they went to school and learned to work for money. They learned to be peasants, proletariat. I don't know if you guys ever read Marx and the Communist Manifesto, the battle between social classes. But that's what's going on today with Trump. The social classes have gotten so used to the government taking care of them, and they've lost the brain power or the willpower to pull themselves out of a mess. I disagree with you about oil. I make millions in oil, but I make it through taxes. For example, I just put $1 million into an oil well. I got $800,000 back day one by not paying the tax on it because the government incentivizes me to be an oil investor. But if I had invested in Exxon or Standard Oil, I would have got nothing. So the average person invests in stocks, and I invest in oil as an entrepreneur. That's education. And the average person is too lazy to find that stuff out. They'd rather sit around and complain that Trump is ripping them off when it's really the bureaucrats that are ripping them off. Guys like, Yellen, who's from UC Berkeley, and her husband was another out there socialist. And then you have Obama, Clinton, and Bernanke. And then we wonder why we're in trouble. Or the Fed has 1,000 PhD economists, all with defined benefit pension plans. They're not worried. They're set for life. Why should they worry about you?
A lot of people want to complain about the president, but they seem to put complaining about the president ahead of how they should think about themselves, and they are the president of their own lives and the choices that they make in their everyday life, and whether their business succeeds in the next 4 years and whether their real estate succeeds in the next few years really doesn't have that much to do with the president. It has to do with them and their financial education and their action taking.
Exactly. And the question is, what happens if you're 65, you're out of a job, you don't have anything that 401k or your Roth IRA? Who are you going to blame then? And that's the problem with all these people who went to school to get a job. And that's why Rich Dad said the rich don't work for money, because people who all they have to do is sell their labor, as Marx said, have no production. And they get angry at those like you and me who have production. That's the difference. It starts in our school system.
Yeah, that sure is where it all begins. You're listening to Get Rich Education. Our guest is Rich Dad Poor Dad author Robert Kiyosaki. More when we come back. I'm your host, Keith Weinhold. Are you looking to invest in your first investment property or grow your existing inventory? Highlands Residential Mortgage can help, offering down payments as low as 15% and credit score requirements down to 620. Their streamlined process is designed to help investors close their loans quickly and without any surprises. You need someone who knows cash flowing real estate and can help guide you through the muddy waters of today's lending environment. So call Graham Parham today, toll free at 855-326-6802. The Parham team can help you purchase or refinance any of your 1 to 4 family investment properties.
NMLS number 195724, 12001 North Central Expressway, Suite 750, Dallas, Texas 75243. Equal housing lender, not licensed in all states.
As a lot of investors know, multifamily real estate has been one of the best asset classes to be invested in most of the last decade. While the great deals have been harder to find lately, there are still opportunities in select markets where savvy investors can get lots of appreciation and strong cash flow if you have a great team. Dave Zook, founder and president of The Real Asset Investor, and his team have been very active in the multifamily space in Memphis, Tennessee. On the heels of the Great Recession of 2009, Dave and his team quietly started acquiring multifamily assets, and in the last few years, he has syndicated over 2,000 apartment units, creating strong cash flow streams and big appreciation for lots of their investors. It's not too late to get involved. If you're an accredited investor and you would like to learn more about investing in great multifamily apartments with a world-class team, email Dave and his team at info@therealassetinvestor.com.
This is Rich Dad Advisor Ken McElroy. Listen to Get Rich Education with Keith Weinhold and don't quit your daydream.
Welcome back to Get Rich Education with our guest, Rich Dad Poor Dad author Robert Kiyosaki. So, Robert, you talked about real estate deals and that you're still an active real estate investor. When you're looking at a real estate deal, what are some of the key things that you consider before you make a purchase? What do you try to keep in mind before buying?
How much debt can I get? I go back to it again. People miss this first question. Rich Dad's lesson number one is the rich don't work for money. What I don't say is what the rich work for is debt. So I look at a piece of property, as you know, I'm looking for the NOI, the net operating income. So net operating income is income minus expense equals NOI. So the question is, how do I increase my income or reduce my expenses to increase my NOI? Because bankers on big projects only lend money on NOI. So if I can increase my NOI, net operating income, I can increase my debt. And debt is tax-free money. That's what I'm looking at. I just want to have a plan on how I can increase the capacity to hold debt that is paid for by my tenants. So my focus is on debt, not money.
I focus a lot on debt too. I mean, Robert, if it weren't for debt, I don't think I would be anywhere with real estate. The leverage that smart debt has made for me and the income that's made for me, all of it, which I can outsource to others. Yeah, so much of this begins with understanding debt really well to create wealth. And that's so counterintuitive to most people. And I think the reason that's counterintuitive to most people, tell me what you think, is most people from early age, they kind of associate debt with, they're sort of trapped underneath this debt. They're going to have to work overtime this weekend so they can afford their car payment. And therefore they associate debt with a whole bunch of struggle or something that they don't really want to do. They don't see it as something that can be outsourced to others while you create leverage for yourself as the investor.
There's consumer debt and investor debt. And most people are consumer debt. That's bad debt. That's how stupid they are. And then they call their car an asset, their house an asset. It's all consumer debt. That's why people are screwed up. And our school system teaches them to be screwed up. That's why I said Marx had it correct. He says the poor don't have any assets. They don't have any production. All they have is bad debt and bad jobs. I have a 20th anniversary edition coming out. Now, the content of the 20th anniversary edition, in other words, the story of Rich Dad, Poor Dad is the same. Nothing's changed. So if you read the book, the content is the same. What is different in the 20th anniversary edition is the reasons I said what I said and I wrote what I wrote. In other words, when Rich Dad, Poor Dad came out in 1997, April 8th, 1997, the economy was booming. But I could see this crisis coming. So in the revised or the 20th anniversary edition, I wrote about the reasons I said what I said. I said why the rich don't work for money, why savers are losers, and why your house is not an asset. It had nothing to do with that. It had to do with the fact that our economy now is in meltdown. We're melting down right now. And people are just sitting there saying, well, I hope the economy comes back. I have bad news for you. I think in 2008, we entered a depression, and we're not coming out for a while. So those who are sitting around hoping Trump is going to save them, or Hillary is going to save them, or Obama is going to save them, that's who I'm concerned about. So for those who want to look at the future, even if you've read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, I would get the 20th anniversary edition, look at the logic behind the reasons for writing that book, and then make a prediction for the future for your own life. You know, so many people ask me, what am I doing? I'm not doing anything different. I'm using debt to get rich, and I'm paying no taxes. And the average person can't do that. That's the problem. So that's why they should listen to your show and take real estate investment classes or stock classes and all that. A person's really got to invest actively in their financial education, or they can turn their money over to a 401k or a Roth IRA. And I suspect their principal in their retirement accounts will be melted down when the economy collapses. That's what I'm afraid of. So I'm not trying to mince my words and make people feel good. I'm really doing my best to disturb people that maybe they'll wake up and go, oh my God, maybe I better do something. Otherwise, I really don't have time to talk to people because most people have got their heads so far up their butt, they can't even see the daylight. And they think that, oh, the rich are evil and that, you know, Trump is a bad guy. I don't know where they live anymore. I just don't get people anymore. This gap between the rich and poor is so wide right now. That's why I mentioned Marx. He talked about social revolution coming up, the gap between the rich and everybody else. And my position is I'd rather have you be on the rich side than on the poor and the middle class. But if you're not going to do anything, then I really can't help you. I'm very concerned about this crash that's coming.
Well, yeah, the middle class continues to get hollowed out. So you can either rise and be with the rich or you can be poor. I mean, for example, you know, they say that debt and taxes make you poor. And then conversely, on the other side of the coin, understanding debt and taxes with what we're talking about, that makes you wealthy.
And that's my second book coming out after the 20th anniversary edition. It's called Why the Rich Are Getting Richer. And it's about debt and taxes. That's what it's about. I don't pay taxes, and Trump is the king of debt, and I borrowed $300 million in the last few years. I love debt. And that's why lesson number one in Rich Dad, Poor Dad is the rich don't work for money. They work for debt. And the reason you want to be in real estate is because you want debt and no taxes. That's how you get rich. So the people who are listening to this whole thing, you're just kind of hoping and praying that maybe you buy a duplex or something. Well, that's a good start. But you may have to clean your brain out and start looking for debt and taxes to make you rich. That requires financial education, not the crap you learn in school.
Well, and here's the good news. I mean, in order to bring debt and taxes to one's advantage, the good news is that the everyday person can get access to real estate with as little as a 3 or 3.5% down payment. So this isn't something that's only available to the wealthy. This is an instrument, leveraged cash flowing real estate, where an ordinary person can become wealthy.
The average person's not going to do it. Keith, they're not going to do it. That's why, sometimes I get testy and frustrated because I talk to so many people, like friends and family, and they're still voting for Hillary and Obama. I think we're going into a depression, and most people don't realize that the depression is going to be the greatest opportunity they ever had.
And things probably aren't as good as what most people think. People see a low unemployment rate reported. I mean, even if you did believe that the unemployment rate were actually reflecting something accurate out there in society, most of the new jobs that have been added have been part-time jobs as well. So it's really a hollow recovery.
I think the average person has got to, flush their head out with an enema or something. All the stuff they were taught in school, go to school, get a job, work hard, save money, get out of debt, and invest in the stock market. That's why they're poor. But I think people are out of time right now. And in my generation, the baby boom generation, I think they're being set up for a clean sweep. They're going to take their pensions from them when a stock market crash. And that's why I speak and I write, and I don't speak about happy times. I said, look, these are the biggest opportunity times. Crisis is fear plus opportunity. This is it. But most people are going to sit around and do nothing and discuss what Trump is doing and what's happening to his cabinet, rather than look at themselves in the mirror or question what the academic system taught you, or who's running the economy. A bunch of academics with no financial education, with defined benefit pension plans and state-of-the-art medical services. They took care of themselves. They forgot about the rest of us. And that's who's running the show. That's the problem. And that's why Trump wants to drain that swamp. I'm afraid he's going to run into a huge problem. They're going to attack that guy, and they're going to blame him for the crash that's coming.
Yeah, I don't know if he's going to make it all 4 years.
I think we're already in a depression starting in 2008. I think the capitalism ended in 2008, and we're now going to socialism or fascism. That's the big picture. That's the way I look at it. Now, on the other side of it, I'm going to get richer because I don't just talk about it. I'm doing something every day. I'm always educating myself. But most people want to sit around and hope that, a duplex will pull them out of the recession. It might, but it might not either. If you real estate, there's a lot of truth to real estate is location, location, location. You have a bad location, you're out of business. A friend of mine from Singapore came to Phoenix, Arizona, and he was showing me where he bought property in America. He said it was really cheap. So I said, show me the property. And it was really cheap. So I said, he says, yeah, I do what you said. I'm buying property in America. And I looked at the map and I said, that's not America. You bought Mexico. I mean, the guy didn't even know the difference between Mexico and America. That's how foolish people are. So I always say to people, we have Rich Dad's education, Rich Dad's coaching, we have online programs, we have a lot of books and tapes, we have the cash flow game and all this. You got to activate that brain of yours because we're in very serious financial trouble. That's why I wrote Rich Dad, Poor Dad, the revised edition, 20th anniversary, so you can understand the logic, so you can see into the future. Because the next 20 years will not be like the past 20 years. We're in a depression.
Well, it's a big year of book publication for the Rich Dad Company. What you, the listener, can do to take action and think differently is check out Rich Dad, Poor Dad, the 20th anniversary, or the next new book, Why the Rich Are Getting Richer. Robert Kiyosaki, thank you so much for coming back on to Get Rich Education.
Keep teaching there, Keith. Thank you.
Well, yeah, Robert and I clearly both embrace debt, smart debt, borrowing massively at a lower rate and then investing it at a higher rate. And then the tenants are the ones that pay down your debt for you anyway. That's why I've personally held millions of dollars worth of debt for a long time, and I still do. and I want even more. You know, some people say that they can't even sleep at night if they have too much debt. Well, I view debt as a smart vehicle for wealth creation, and I wouldn't be able to sleep if I had too little debt, okay? But at the same time, create value for others, and then you can feel good about being a profiteer. A clear mission of mine is to provide society with sound housing. That is core. Now, I guess it didn't come up during our chat, but one of my favorite Rich Dad quotes about debt, and it's really a lesser known quote, is this: people without leverage work for those with leverage. I just love that. People without leverage work for those with leverage. Another way to say that is people with dumb debt work for those with smart debt, okay? Robert talked about the widening gap between the rich and everybody else. That's why on this show, we talk about investing, how the wealthy invest, yet make sure their vehicles available to middle-class people and often even lower than middle class. The rich don't work for money. Instead, they focus on providing value for others. With a small down payment, you can own tangible production and a lot more than just one duplex. The world has changed. However, most people still run on kind of this old and faulty financial programming. And you just don't get this education in school. You get it at, well, places like Rich Dad or here at Get Rich Education. All right, just consider that in one school year, a child spends 7,800 hours at home and just 900 hours at school. 7,800 hours at home, 900 at school. So which teacher should be the most accountable then? It's your parents more than the school teachers that you've had, but most likely neither your parents nor your teachers ever had a financial education. So that's why you learn things here first. So you first learn things here in an informal setting, and that environment, that informal setting, it shouldn't diminish this message at all. So here we go. Robert Kiyosaki and his Rich Dad company, they'll basically tell you that here are the old rules of life and money, and there are about 8 of them. These are those old, antiquated rules. Here, it's that faulty financial programming, and that is first, you go to school. Next, you get a job. Next, you work hard. Next, you pay your taxes. Then you save your money. Then you get out of debt. Next, you invest in a well-diversified portfolio of mutual funds, usually inside a retirement account. And then finally, you retire. Okay. Does that right there, does that sound like success to you? Does that even sound like a life that you would want to live? Let's go over these 8 and look at how I live, and I'll give you my commentary on those. Number 1, go to school. Yeah, I went to school and I graduated college. Next is get a job. Yeah, I had a job for a while, and I don't work for anyone today. No job. Thirdly, work hard. Yeah, sometimes I did, but I thought more about working smart while I worked hard. Pay your taxes is the next one. Yeah, I pay my taxes, but not very much. I don't quite have them down to 0 yet, but I'm getting close, working with the same firm that Robert Kiyosaki uses. Next is save your money. No way. I don't do that. That's nonsense. I invest instead. The next one, get out of debt. No way. Even though I have the ability to get out of smart debt, doing so would be, frankly, irresponsible. The next one, invest in a well-diversified portfolio of mutual funds inside a retirement account. Of course not. That is almost completely irresponsible. I'll talk about that more in a minute. And then the last one, retire. Well, basically, if you work for money, if you work for others, you're more likely to want to retire. But those that do what they want to do, like me, they don't really want to retire so much. So those antiquated rules, they just don't apply today, but that's still what so many people think success is. And that's a limiting mindset. That's a fixed mindset, a scarcity mindset. I mean, why would you save money when savings rates are maybe 1/10 of what the real rate of inflation is? You've got to ask that if you know any better, why in the world would you invest through a 401k? Investing in a 401k, it approaches the irresponsible if you know any better. And I've talked about this on another show. When 401k plans were first introduced, they were called salary reduction plans because that's principally what they do to you. How could you tell your spouse, or what would you tell your child? What would you say when you let them know that you reduced your salary and you diminished both your quality of life and their quality of life, while you could have made their lives better all their lives by you yourself investing in cash flowing assets now in your young age, in your middle age, and in your old age? Okay, well, instead, you're just going to wait on your 401k plan so that you can only get passive income from it starting in your 60s? That's irresponsible. You could start that in your 20s or your 30s or your 40s or your 50s with cash flowing real assets. So why wait decades? You're not getting that time back once it's gone. And the cash flowing real estate has better rates of return and tax advantages that are the same or better than those dream crushing, life deferring 401ks. That's why a 401k is not a tax deferral plan so much as it is a life deferral plan. You deferred life. It's a salary reduction plan. Well, the good news is you can start a salary increase plan right now. Why delay gratification if there's no benefit in the delay? What would you say to your child? Okay, you stifled their options and their opportunity. Any real change begins when one starts telling themselves the truth. You know who the most important person to be honest with in your life is? It's you. You know the first part of solving any problem in life? And this is great news for you because you're going to learn about where change really starts. And I need to remind myself of this sometimes too. The first part of solving any problem is simply recognizing that there is one. That's the pivot point. It's that clarifying moment right there that's actually the impetus for change. It's the clarity of brutal honesty with oneself. Today, Robert mentioned Donald Trump a few times. Robert and the president are friends. They've published a few books together, and Trump gave that broad address to Congress last week that motivated some sets of people and created quite a short-term stock market rally because some people felt his behavior was more presidential, I guess. Well, over the last 6 weeks, I've visited 7 different countries, and you know what everyone wants to ask me about? And this is usually the van driver of our various tours that ends up asking me this. As soon as they learn I'm from the United States, they want to ask me what I think about Donald Trump. And you know what my answer is? And okay, here we go. And even though as a real estate investor myself, you might think that my top answer is that I'm thrilled that a real estate guy is in the White House. Nope. You know what my top answer is on what I think about Donald J. Trump as president of the United States is? And by the way, can you believe that I'm about to state a political opinion here on the show? Well, it's more benign than you think. That's because what I think about Trump as president is that it just doesn't matter that much. It matters, but people put an outsized influence on this. You are the president of your own life, and that's what matters most. And that's more good news for you, no matter who you voted for. If someone thinks that their success or their dreams or their ambitions or the quality of their workout this morning or their goal to climb Kilimanjaro this year is so dependent upon whom the POTUS is, then maybe they're thinking too small. No one needs permission from anyone to live abundantly and make sure your financial decisions reflect abundance and not scarcity. And all right, this isn't a political show. This is a show about building your wealth. In fact, by far, that's the most politics I've ever discussed in 126 episodes. As far as the next 2 shows, these next 2 weeks, we're going to talk about debt. Robert just told us that it's the top criterion that he considers before getting into a real estate deal. So I'm going to tell you exactly and tactically why the rich don't work for money. Instead, debt works for the rich. And I'm going to talk about debt in a way that's really specific and actionable for you. And it is counterintuitive stuff. So I'm going to tell you to be ready. If you've never heard before what I'm going to tell you the next 2 weeks, it might just turn your world upside down where what you think was dark is now light, and where what you thought was day is now night. I'm going to talk about how you want to consider getting into debt, massively smart debt, because I've had a lot of success with using smart debt as leverage to create wealth, and you'll learn how to do it too. Because, I'm still a young guy. I didn't come from a wealthy family. I never worked at some high-paying job. I didn't really have any transformative or original business idea, like I wasn't the founder of a new social media platform or something. You will find people smarter than me out there all over the place. More than anything, my investing success has to do with the way that I take on and handle debt. You are the president of your own life, and you make the financial decisions every day on each dollar that you choose to invest and each dollar that you choose to spend. We've got a lot of amazing shows coming up. After I talk about debt in great detail, we've got America's Money Answers man, Jordan Goodman, appearing here for his Get Rich Education debut. After that, we've got the return of Rich Dad Advisor Ken McElroy. With a great magnitude of gratitude, I've got to thank Robert Kiyosaki and his Rich Dad Advisors for just an incredible amount of support since the beginning here at Get Rich Education, and for inviting me to be a writer for them myself. Special thanks today to our guest, Robert Kiyosaki. Check out Robert's new books for this year, including the Rich Dad Poor Dad 20th Anniversary Edition, and all of his resources at richdad.com. I'll see you next week. Though you might quit your day job, whatever you do, don't quit your daydream.
You've been listening to Get Rich Education, telling you what the wealthy won't tell you about real estate and investing.
Nothing on this show should be considered specific, personal, or professional advice. Please consult an appropriate tax, legal, real estate, financial, or business professional for individualized advice. Opinions of guests are their own. Information is not guaranteed. All investment strategies have the potential for profit or loss. The host is operating on behalf of Get Rich Education, LLC exclusively.
Cash flow real estate investors nationwide and worldwide, this is Get Rich Education's Keith Weinhold. Forbes has rated Memphis, Tennessee as the #1 cash flowing market in the world. Our good friends at Mid-South Homebuyers have been Memphis's premier turnkey real estate provider for 14 years with a stellar reputation and an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau. Owner Terry Kerr was born and raised in Memphis. Yeah, he knows the market and has renovated and sold over 1,000 houses in the Memphis area. Find out what their many repeat buyers already know. Their houses are completely renovated, even come with a 1-year builder's warranty and a lifelong rental guarantee. They're a perfect fit for the first-time out-of-state investor or the seasoned investor diversifying their portfolio. Mid-South Homebuyers' friendly staff makes investing easy. Learn more at midsouthhomebuyers.com or give them a call at 901-217-HOME. The preceding program was brought to you by your home for wealth building, GetRichEducation.com.